grandchildren. We have one with us, Linda. It is so great to see so many people excited about a very important issue, something that made America great. That is liberty. We certainly have been blessed to be able to live in a country as ours has been, based on liberty, based on a constitution, and based on the goodness of mankind. And we had a great nation, the richest nation, the largest middle class ever. But today, things have changed because we have lost a concentration on our values. And we were warned about this. You know, the founder said, we're going to give you a republic, but you've got to keep the republic. And the most important thing to keep a republic is the morality of the people. If the people go astray, the government will go astray as well. And that is why this is a moral issue as much as it is a political issue. We didn't get in this mess overnight. We probably won't get out of it overnight, but I'll tell you what, if we continue to do what we're doing now in Washington and with this administration and the current Congress, it's going to be a long time to get out of this mess. But if we do the right things, we can be out of it in a short period of time. It might take a year or so, but doing the right things, corrections come rather quickly. But our problem is that we've gotten into this mess because government was too big. We had too many individuals in Washington that didn't take their oath of office seriously. Too much money, we borrowed too much money, we taxed the people too much, and we printed too much money. And guess what they're doing in Washington? They're spending and taxing and printing and regulating, and they wonder why we're not getting over this recession depression that we have. Why should we be surprised? What we need to do is say, how did we get in this mess? The government wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and they were doing the things they should not have been doing. If you look at the Constitution carefully, it's a thou shalt not document, and thou shalt not is on the federal government. It was meant to bring people together and different states together, and the people get brought together, and the government was supposed to be local. But what their fear was is that the government, the central government, would get too big, so they tried to put some restraints on the central government. And they wrote into the document, Article 1, Section 8 certainly mentions exactly what the government's allowed to do and what Congress can legislate. And yet today, we have been taught in our schools, unfortunately and tragically, that our presidents make the statement, and it's been accepted, that they say presidents take the position that if it isn't prohibited in the Constitution, they can do anything they want. And that is not right. The only thing the president can do... The only thing the president should be allowed to do is what is explicitly given to the president through the Constitution. For instance, in an open republic, in a true free society, the government should be very, very open. The people's privacy should be very, very secret. But now we have a government that undermines our privacy and keeps themselves secret. The CIA, the FBI, as well as the Federal Reserve operates in total secrecy, and we need to change that, obviously. But we didn't get into this problem overnight, and for months or years at least, people have said, and I've said in the past, that we should stop this spending. We're passing this debt on to the next generation, and we can't do that. And some people still say that. I essentially don't say that anymore because I think we're at the point of not passing it on to anybody. Right. What we're doing in Washington today is passed on to the current generation if each and every one of us are suffering the consequences of many, many decades of the undermining of our personal liberties and the rule of law under the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear on several of the issues. On trade, certainly markets should be traded. On property, you can't take property without due process. And on money issues, very, very clear. The founders knew something about runaway inflation. They participated in it. They had the runaway inflation of the continental dollar, and they said, boy, this is a mess. Let's not allow this to happen again. So what did they put in the Constitution? Guess what? Only gold and silver can be legal tender. That is still the law of the land. And also, there's a prohibition in the Constitution that you can't emit bills of credit, which is paper money. And also, it gives no authority to have a central bank. So the law of the land contradicts everything that we have been doing, and this is very significant because if you look at history a little bit, you will notice that the downslide on our protection of our liberties, our Constitution, our economy, and our foreign policy occurred approximately 100 years ago. Certainly 1913 wasn't a very good year for us, as we know, because that was the introduction of the notion to set the stage for endless growth of government and consumption of wealth. And that was the giving to the people the income tax as well as the Federal Reserve, both need repealed. The prohibitions in the Constitution have been ignored, certainly in foreign policy. There is a strict provision there for having a strong national defense. It was not left up to the states for a national defense. So that is the responsibility, and a lot of burden is placed on the president as being the commander-in-chief. But that doesn't mean that we should have a foreign policy of endless wars, undeclared, unwinnable. President, I promised that I would never go to war without proper permission by the Congress from the people. And if there's necessity to declare a war, you declare the war, you fight the war, you win it, and you get over it, and you come on home. We have gone astray. We haven't fought a war with a declaration. Not only that, do we allow our presidents to take us to war, we allow our presidents to casually go to war. Sometimes they inform the Congress, sometimes they mention it to the people, but they get their authority from the United Nations. No, we shouldn't ever do that. That is the undermining of national sovereignty, and this is one of the problems that we've had. Even today, you know, going into Libya was under NATO and the United Nations. We're in Afghanistan under NATO, and it's endless. If we would just follow that one provision, don't go to war unless there's a declaration, just think of the difference of the past 10 years. All those wars wouldn't have been fought. The 8,500 Americans that we have lost, the 44,000 of severe injuries, the hundreds of thousands now begging and pleading for help with post-traumatic stress syndrome and looking for help. And also, our national debt would be $4 trillion smaller. That is the kind of debt we have run up over these last 12 years. And for what purpose? This nation building and policing of the world, getting involved in these internal affairs and these civil wars, it isn't to our benefit. It undermines our defense and bankrupts our country. And frequently when I speak, people will take it seriously and they'll say, okay, yeah, I think I sort of agree with you about bringing troops home, but how fast can you bring the troops home? I says, as quickly as I can get the ships over to where they are, and I just bring them home. Disruptive. How could it be more disruptive than sending young men and women over for the 5th and the 6th tour of duty? And now it's being revealed more of the military people are willing to speak out and telling us about the futility of what's going on. And the one thing that reassures me, not only have I served in the military and during the 60s when times weren't exactly very pleasant, but now when you look at what the active military and the retired military people do in their picking of their candidate, our organization, our candidacy and our campaign gets more donations from the military, active and inactive, than all the other candidates put together, including the president. So the foreign policy obviously has to be changed. We don't have to think 1 minute that we would be less safe. We would be more safe. We now make the assumption that we can bomb any country, any place in the world. Our drones are more powerful. We have more weapons than everybody else put together. We spend more money than everybody else put together. And believe me, with my knowledge of the military and politics and an understanding, one thing that we have is we have a very, very powerful, efficient military, and we don't have to be worried about being attacked. Let me tell you, they are not going to attack us and invade this country. That doesn't give us license to push ourselves around the world. And this is our problem. We've done too much of that, and we have built up too many enemies because of it. The founders were very much aware of this. They talked about the relationship, and they wanted friendly relationship and trade with any country that will offer that. They didn't believe in trying to punish people by sanctions, and they certainly did put it in the Constitution that if you can find a friendly dictator, you can give him a lot of money to bribe him. Foreign policy. We go around looking for our dictators, and if they do our bidding, we give them billions of dollars. If they don't do it, we bomb them. And I thought, well, there has to be another option, friendship and trade and at least negotiations with people, which would be quite different. But I failed to realize there was actually a fourth option, which we're participating in with Pakistan. Not only do we bomb that country, we give them a lot of money at the same time. So it's time to become more aware of this. And one thing is I've been talking about this for a long time. I recall the first speech I gave against going to war against Iraq was in 1998. So we need to, push these programs, because there's no reason why we should continue to do what we're doing, because it is literally bankrupting our country. And it is up to us, the people. If the people speak out, believe me, government will change. And the government does actually reflect the people. And for too long, we've been too complacent. And we were too complacent for too many years, decades, if not for the last 70 or 80 years. We were complacent because we have been a very, very wealthy nation. We were concerned about the wealth. We were concerned about material things. It encouraged the lobbyists to go to Washington and get this wealth redistributed for the special interests. And still we watched it. But today, things are completely different because we're much poorer, and it's a failed system. The entitlement system doesn't work. Morally, it's wrong. Entitlements are not rights. You're not entitled to your neighbor's property, even if you send the IRS after the property to get it for you. Voted for the entitlement system over the many decades with good intentions, and I understand that, because there are a few who know exactly what they're doing, and they knew what the consequence would be. But a lot of people say, well, there are going to be people who are falling through the cracks, and the only thing that we can do to help people is have a government program, not realizing that eventually the government program backfires and hurts the very people you're trying to help. A perfect example of this is what happened with the housing program. The people who felt good, they're entitled to it, they deserve a house, a free house, let the government do whatever they can. And also, it was this magnificent thing about inflation. Get them to hold a house, the house will go up in value, a $100,000 house will be $200,000, and then the people can borrow against this money, and it'll be a perpetual wealth machine. Not realizing that Austrian free market economics fully explained it, that that's what you call a bubble that's created by the Federal Reserve, loose monetary policy. And